Hello and welcome to a best of episode. This is an episode from a previous season of the podcast that we are now uploading here. Yes, the podcast is hosted on this channel from now on, but it was previously on the EWTC News podcast channel. We felt certain episodes were worthy of getting a second look, a little bit more attention, and this is definitely one of those. This is our 100+ hour investigation into the He Gets Us campaign. Now, this was released in early 2023. Things have developed since then. They're going through many different changes. We are aware we are going to be updating, but this is going to give you probably a better grasp on the He Gets Us campaign than you will get anywhere else. There is some good reporting out there, but no one has gone quite as deep as we seem to have gone. So we really hope you enjoy this, and we really hope this is very informative to you.
Welcome to the Wokepedia podcast. I'm Pastor Sam, and today this is going to be a big one. So we've got it broken down for you into multiple sections, and those sections are noted in the description by breaks in the recording and with chapter marks if you're on YouTube. And so you can go ahead and find those and use those for your convenience. But this is going to be a really exciting episode that we have today. So all of this information we use for the investigation is also available for all to verify, which is really important. We want that to be verified. What we say is true, and you can see that link in the description as well. And we want this to be informative to those who already have strong opinions about He Gets Us being problematic, but mostly we want it to be a valuable resource to those who have a more undecided opinion, or even perhaps you agree with He Gets Us. If you are one of those who likes He Gets Us, we just ask that you keep an open mind when you're going through this, but examine the information and look at the whole case. We really encourage you to do that. We've worked really hard on this, but that doesn't mean that we're immune to getting, potentially a detail wrong or something like that. But the entire case doesn't rest on one detail or something like that. So if you've noticed an inaccurate detail, please let us know so that we can correct any mistakes that could possibly be in here. And once again, you can contact us by sending an email to contact@wokepedia@gmail.com. Once again, that's contact@wokepedia@gmail.com. But if you are from He Gets Us, which we hope that many of you end up watching this, or you're a company that's perhaps connected with He Gets Us and you disagree with us, we would love to talk to you and consider this an open invitation for any He Gets Us representative to join us for an interview. We would love to interview you and hear what you have to say about this and really discuss these topics with you. But we've already had a conversation with Brad Hill of Glue, and we hope to keep those conversations open and going with him, those line of communication, and to get answers to the list of questions that we sent. But again, any representative is invited. We want to make sure you know that you are invited to dialogue with us, and we want the most accurate information we can possibly get as we go and we break down He Gets Us. But as we go along, remember that the ads and the public facing material are aimed at non-Christians. That's important to remember. It's aimed at non-Christians. We cannot fill in the gaps or interpret things in a Christian way, they'll go and say. How are things interpreted by non-Christian is the measure that must be used for publicly facing this material. That's really kind of the premise that they're going from. But Kyle, can you give us a brief refresher, kind of where we left off last time with He Gets Us?
So if you haven't seen the previous episode, it's very useful if you go watch that first. But for people who haven't seen that, and just are very curious and want to jump right in, the super basics you need to know. He Gets Us is a advertising campaign and more. It was started by a group called the Signatory, also known as the Servant Foundation, which is a donor-advised fund. And it's run in a practical sense by 3 different companies, those being Haven, Glue, and Lerma. They don't just produce the ads. A lot of people think it's just the ads, but beyond the ads, they produce articles, they produce study guides, they even produce books and video resources, apparel. They produce full-on sermons that you can get and use, and more. So it's a lot bigger than just the ads, which is one of the reasons that we really want to do this such a big, deep dive into it. Now, content of the ads. You might be coming into this thinking that's going to be the biggest focus. The biggest focus is going to be the content of the ads. And, I got feedback. People were very curious about those sermons that they have ready to go. But frankly, we're covering those right now in the introduction because, one, a lot of people have already pointed out a lot of information about the ads. But bizarrely, that's not where the biggest amount of information is. And specifically information that has brought us to the conclusion that we need to feature them on Wokipedia. Now, the ads in general, they present Jesus in a very modern way. They present him as pretty much just a man and an inspirational figure, someone we can all rally around, we can all connect to. And it's been noticed by multiple people. They very much seem to be appealing to the young and the left. And I mean that together, as in the young left. Gen Z, who are generally more liberal, they're trying to paint Jesus in a way that makes him sound like one of them. And the sermons is slightly just a recap, but they come in topical and expository versions. But they're both just, it's the same material. I went through and compared a couple of them between the expository one and the topical one, and there was whole segments that are literally just cut and pasted and rearranged. So it's the identical sermon either way, but it's fully scripted, comes with slides and graphics for you to use. It's all ready to go. These sermons are made by the Billy Graham Center at Wheaton College, formerly the residence of Ed Stetzer. He just in the past couple days of when we're recording this, is now at Biola, partying it up with other woke academic Matt Hall. But compared to the really compromising stuff that we're going to look at, these sermons are they're just poor quality. They're just weak. They're just bad sermons. But frankly, there's so much deeper that we need to get into outside of them. Now, no pastor should ever be using pre-made sermons. Then no pastor should be buying sermons from someone else. No pastor should be preaching anything other than what he has humbly made through his study before the Lord in submission to God and in shepherding the flock entrusted to him by God. Especially, they shouldn't be preaching sermons that are made by and promoting a specific ministry and promoting a specific agenda. And yeah, he gets us branding is all over the slides, it's over the sermons. You're supposed to, it's recommended you start off by showing the video, things like that. It's really promotes he gets us, which is weird to me because they don't have a revenue model. Like, they don't earn money. So why are they so obsessed with you representing their brand? But frankly, that's it for the sermons and the ads. Now, if you're looking at how long this is, yeah, we got a lot of content to go over. So let's keep moving forward.
All right. So that ends it for the introduction section here, right? Introduction part. And so now we're going to be moving into part 1, which is going to cover these 3 entities and some other places that partner with He Gets Us to create the Lerma, Haven, and Glue, and some other people partners. So stick around with us. All right, so here's part one of He Gets Us. We've got the three main entities with Haven, Glue, and Lerma, and of course, some other people that are partnering with them. But let's start off by talking about Haven. Now, Haven is the most clean imaged of the three of Lerma and Glue, or the other two that go along with it, as they keep their socials and interviews very basic. But what can you tell us, Kyle, about Haven?
Well, though we don't have as much to go on about their outward-facing stances on different topics, we can look at how they represent themselves and represent the campaign in a less formal way. And this is what I think is often very telling: is how does someone represent something when it's not this like scripted interview or something of that nature? So these are some comments that come from Bill McKendry of Haven. He's their chief creative officer, and he's one of He Gets Us' representatives. And there was a conversation that broke out on a post that he had made, or a post that the company had made on LinkedIn. Yeah, did you know that people actually use LinkedIn to like comment on things and make posts?
I think that's the most bizarre thing so far of this that we've gotten into. Don't worry, it gets more bizarre, but LinkedIn's normally not the place where you get those conversations going.
No, I found it very interesting. But in response to someone who was critical of the ads, didn't like the way that things were represented, he made these comments. Jesus was born to a teen mom. Jesus was a refugee as an infant. Jesus was anti-racist. Now, that term in particular, anti-racist, was, not just against racism, but term anti-racism obviously is a bit of a loaded term. Needless to say, I don't believe you're the target audience here. The goal is to reintroduce to our culture the real Jesus of the Bible, not the distorted, polarizing version that is so prevalent in America today. Now, I find his comments there, one, less than generous with someone, considering that they're so covered in generosity. They ooze talking about love and generosity, yet with another Christian, it's a little bit not the case, a little bit dismissive. But there's just some weird comments in there. But let's add some more, because he continues on. Let's add some more context to what he's saying. Continuing a response, this is to another commenter. Jesus modeled the transformative process through love and grace that caused people not just to believe they ought to change, but they were instead awed to change. John 3:17 makes it clear that God does not start his journey with condemnation. So you're laughing a little bit, Sam. Enlighten us. Why are you chuckling?
Well, first of all, I mean, the whole teen mom and Jesus was a refugee as an infant. He literally moved from one part of the empire to another part of the empire. So, I mean, I'm over on the western side of Iowa, and though I might want to make fun of Nebraska, I understand that I'm not really moving to another nation when we go to Nebraska. In that, and also the teen mom thing. I mean, Mary would have been very much at the normal age when ladies were having birth there. Though it might be factually true to say that she was most likely a teen mom, it's not with the same connotation that we would have in our culture. They're trying to force upon our current culture the interpretation of the Bible. So instead of letting the Bible interpret our culture, they're interpreting the Bible this man is interpreting the Bible through his cultural lens.
Yeah.
And the whole
Yeah.
John 3:17 thing. Come on, man. Like, do you not understand sin? No, Jesus, his goal wasn't to condemn the world. That's why he came and died on the cross. That's what he's saying there.
Mhm.
But that's not saying that condemnation isn't present. It's saying condemnation was already here. He didn't need to come for condemning. We condemned ourselves. And so he's coming to
Yep.
save us. That, like, I don't even know where to take this. Some people shouldn't try to be theologians.
What? The saving has to come after the condemnation. There has to be condemnation for there to be saving.
Right.
Like, and who is the judge of the world? It's Jesus. He's going to be at the end. We're all going to stand before Christ and be judged. So it's separating aspects of Christ from himself. It's separating condemnation. Like, condemnation isn't something from God. Condemnation is something that comes from somewhere else. No, it does come from God. It comes from us triggering that.
Yeah,
We're the
right,
ones that
it's
sinned.
'cause
We're the
God
ones
is
that brought condemnation on ourselves.
Yeah, it's because God is just.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
John 3:17 has nothing to do with removing the justice of God. It's that God is just. And so therefore he's coming to fulfill the obligation of that justice by sending his son.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. So it just paints we're going to hear more from Mr. McKendry later. So we're keeping the one on Haven pretty light, but
yeah. Should we move into to a more
paints
sticky subject?
Strange. Oh my goodness.
I mean,
Yeah.
you knew I had to get my classic humor in here. Let's move on to glue. What do we know about glue? Because I'm afraid if I, continue on from that, I will not be talking about He Gets Us, but I'll be talking about Elmer's. So what do we know about glue, Kyle?
Well, it's made of the hoofs of different no. So Glue is a tech company that connects churches to seekers that are collected from various campaigns, not just He Gets Us. There's some other campaigns, although it seems that it's 90+% He Gets Us. It provides tools like texting campaigns, and this is where you can find the sermons and other resources. And it also hosts content for churches to use. So a bunch of different organizations host their content, and that the organizations hosting their content has exploded over the past year, and particularly just in the past few months that we've been really investigating. Absolutely exploded. Now it's hard to prove that in a concrete way because that's inside their platform, and you can make an account and you can go look, but it doesn't actually say when stuff was added, and we weren't like taking screenshots. So that's not going to be a point we dwell on. But like Haven, Glue does keep a pretty neutral image online. There just isn't that much that they like put out there that you could really nail them on something and go, this is where they stand on a certain topic or issue. But we want to focus on something that shows a lot about the company's leadership. So Pat Gelsinger, he's the CEO of Intel. Yeah, it sounds like it might be a little bit of a turn right now, but no, he's also the chairman of the board at Glue. He's outspokenly Christian, but he's also outspoken about several other topics as well. And we want to look at that. And as a note, when we contacted He Gets Us and gave them a list of questions, this is after we had some other conversations. We finally gave them a list of questions. We had been discussing other questions, but we gave them a list of questions. Hey, we want answers to these. We asked Glue about Glue's stance on certain topics, and we referenced Mr. Gelsinger's stances. And in response, he attempted to clean his Twitter of relevant tweets. So here's some of the stuff that he removed. Let's get it up on there. So here's the first tweet. This is crucial to recognize and understand. More often than not, solutions to our biggest struggles are not simple. There are no quick fixes to the problems we face today, including COVID-19 or systemic racism. Interesting. Now let's continue on. Love your neighbor as yourself. Matthew 22:39. During this time of great global hardship, even more acutely within the Black community, we're all deeply reminded how much we must be neighbors. Today, my prayer is for equality. There is no time or place for racial injustice. This is an important day for reflection. And now, if you notice, some of these if you're watching the video, you notice that some of these, well, they weren't captured by an English speaker and they have a different profile picture. That's because I had to go back into web archives to find these ones. Because again, after we brought some of these up, he started deleting them. This is an important day for reflection, education, and action. Thank you to the VMware Black Power of different communities for all you have done during this time, for organizing discussions, watch parties, and service learning. Their deaths will not be in vain. Hashtag Black Lives Matter. Now, VMware was the company that he previously was the head of before he went to Intel. So we're covering now 3 different companies that he's been involved in, and you'll notice a pattern between 2 of them. The Black at VMware Presents Global Culture Club meeting on Friday was inspirational and eye-opening. I am listening and have a lot to learn. We must continue working to fight for diversity, equity, and inclusion. We have more to do, more action to take. So obviously, I mean, Sam, we talk about critical race theory in other places and just the false narrative that is both theologically and pragmatically, just looking at the world. Would you say that he's very much promoting tenets of critical race theory?
I think that's probably an understatement. He definitely is promoting critical race theory here. And I mean, it's easy to see that in presenting it, whether it's through saying systemic racism, whether it's the diversity, equity, and inclusion, or as I like to put it, diversity, inclusion, and equity. And or whether it's the idea of going and presenting Black Lives Matter in all of this kind of stuff, and this I don't know, that word global club that he was talking about. There's no doubt that he's viewing the world through the lens of race and saying, I need to learn. And in the context that he's saying it is that I need to learn because of my skin color. Well, I mean, in the experience of life that I have or didn't have, and that's critical race theory. That's really what he's getting at here. He's viewing it in the lens of oppressor versus oppressed.
Yeah. Now,
but he didn't just
not just his.
Go for it.
Yeah. No, I'll let you say it.
Oh, okay. I was just going to say, it's not just that he went into to critical race theory. It's that this guy also kind of gets into supporting some other things. Should we take a look at what else he supports?
Yeah. So he's not only is he outspoken about critical race theory concepts, systemic racism, supporting Black Lives Matter, and just this narrative of systemic oppression. It also goes into very much outspoken support for the, quote, LGBT movement. So let's read this one, more recent one. D&I, or for diversity inclusion, is a journey for all. At Intel will be aggressively diverse, but I won't be perfect. hear from Intel employees about what Pride Month means to them and perspectives on how to be a better ally every day, not just in June. Hashtag Pride Inside. Hashtag I am Intel. And then it has a link to the blog post that goes over this. Now, you could just say, oh, well, he's the head of this big company. But I'm sorry, as a Christian, it doesn't matter if you're the head of some big multinational company. You don't suspend your Christianity because you work at a company. And I think this really goes beyond just a pragmatic stance. I think this is his stance. Let's continue.
Right.
It's an honor to be recognized as on HRC's 2019 Corporate Equality Index as a great place to work for LGBTQ equality. We're always working to make hashtag VMware a more inclusive and diverse environment. We hope to continue improving in the future. And then it has a big graphic showing off their Human Rights Campaign Foundation best places to work, 100% corporate equality index score from 2019. And again, these are all tweets he deleted. He covered this stuff up in the last month or 2 months, which is, to me, it's more concerning than if he would have left them and then doubled down. It's more concerning when someone tries to quietly sweep things under the rug.
Yeah, I mean,
But
clearly he knows that he's wrong.
Well, he either knows he's wrong or he knows that Christians are going to see it as wrong and wants to hide it from them.
Right.
Either way, it's super problematic. Now, this one's just ridiculous. I mean, look at this, Sam.
I don't even know how well I can look at this.
If you're listening to this on the audio, yeah. If you're listening on the audio, this is an episode you might want to go back and just watch sections of on the video, available on YouTube, Rumble, even on Spotify. Spotify does the video. So great having George Takei speak with VMware this week. Many important lessons and insights. His talk was part of our virtual celebrations for Pride, a reminder that we're not only creating a D&I culture in the office, but a safe, supportive community wherever we may be working. My goodness.
I mean, that's a lot of rainbows there. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, it's a picture of a Zoom call with George. Is it Takei or Takei? I can never remember.
I think Takei.
And then they, all the people, many of them have rainbow flag backgrounds, and you can see they have their preferred pronouns in it as well. Now, Sam, why is that a problem? Why is he's not putting any of this in the context of He Gets Us. He's not even representing Glue by name, saying Glue is a great place for diversity and inclusion and LGBT and Black Lives Matter. But why would this be a problem?
Well, first of all, he's a leader, obviously, at Glue. In fact, he's the chairman of the board, correct? Or is this the CCO?
Yeah, he's the chairman of the board.
Yeah, he's chairman of the board. So first of all, this is leadership. And ultimately, a leader sets the tone for where everything else goes, where the direction is heading. And the other thing is, and really more looking at it from a personal aspect, there comes to be some great questions, obviously, about his orthodoxy, because he doesn't have a orthodox view on sexuality. He doesn't have an orthodox view on race or on anthropology. And so these are really, really concerning things if you don't understand the nature of mankind and you don't understand the relations of mankind. And so we're seeing a really big problem because these are the values that he's representing, and these are the values that Glue is letting lead them. And of course, we're going to see.
Yeah, and again, in response
the values that are in
asking questions about it, we asked about this and what's Glue's stance and position, and why is their chairman saying stuff like this, was not to acknowledge it, but was to have him hide it. Again, that's incredibly, that says a lot about where they're at.
Right. And
But
it's like we addressed before. It's that they either know that he's wrong or they know that he's going to be perceived as wrong by Orthodox Christianity because he is wrong. Whether or not he
yeah,
agrees with being wrong, we
yeah.
don't really know. But the hiding of this, no, it means that he understands that he's going against orthodoxy. And that's concerning. That's
Mm.
trying to cover up sin. But should we move on to kind of
Yeah. Let's move on to
the worst
next
one of the
company.
bunch?
Yeah,
And
and you ready to get a little podcast inception going on here as we listen to a podcast within a podcast?
all right, let's do it. I'll spin my token here.
Hi, and welcome to the Loud and Clear podcast, where we talk to people who give a about advertising. My name is Emily Quigg. I am a digital.
That's the introduction for Lerma's podcast. What do you think about that? Do you think that's shouts? Do you think it's going to appeal to conservative Orthodox Christians?
Do you
or does that set a little bit of tone?
Do you believe that Mark Driscoll's Orthodox? Well, we don't have time to get into that question. But no, I don't
start that around me.
No, I don't believe that will appeal to Christians, and it certainly shouldn't appeal to Christians.
Yeah. Now, I know there's certain Christians make a case that swearing, cursing, crude language is not always well. And even I'll make a case. I mean, I think me and you talked about this once, where a pastor threw back someone's foul language in their face, and it stunned the person enough to get them to shut up and
hear the gospel.
Then we're willing to listen. Yeah. Words are just words, but there's an immaturity. Now, I take a pretty strong stance against crude language. But again, in just that, they were using it essentially for shock value. But that should set you up a standard of what this company is, and they're kind of the bad boy of the bunch.
Right. And in just, 15 seconds on that, even if you're from the point of view that cussing is okay for a Christian, which that's not that's generally not where we're at. The thing is that the Jesus calling them a brood of vipers, he did it with a purpose. He didn't just say it just to say it. Paul,
he didn't use it as a cuss word.
Right. He was using it as a descriptor. This is just using it as idle language. And that's the intro to their podcast.
Yep.
But should we see what they have to say?
Podcast in a moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this company is pretty woke. So let's talk about that aspect of it. This is from their Facebook 2020, June 2nd. That should give you a little bit of a hint. If you are being neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. Desmond Tutu, #Blackout Tuesday. And this is one woke people were putting a black profile picture
for Black Lives Matter
as part of Black Lives Matter movement in response to the whole George Floyd situation. And continuing on, this one's a little bit of a special one. In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. Martin Luther King Jr. Join the conversation. #silence is violence. #brands faking. #silent brands. #diversity and inclusion. #multicultural marketing. And this is an advertisement for a little seminar, Zoom seminar that they were doing. Does your brand's silence raise a red flag? Young people discuss brands and their role in multicultural America. Which I find this just weird and disgusting and disturbing, because on one hand, they're claiming to be supporting the Black Lives Matter narrative and be supporting of the supposed grieving that is going on because anyway, but then they're using it as an opportunity to kind of push their brand.
Yeah.
It's predatory in my estimation.
Never let a tragedy go to waste, right? And
exactly.
We see this, and it's obvious that they're not just promoting critical race theory, but they're actually promoting the fact that it's not just saying that we're critical race theorists. They're saying that if you're not being a critical race theorist, you're actually committing violence against us. It's going beyond that. It's not just the Christian woke. This is the straight up secular woke that they're really presenting here. Which of course then they continue on. These guys are the bad boys of the bunch, so to say. But they don't just stop with critical race theory. Yeah. What is this that you just pulled up, Kyle?
This is again taken from their Facebook. It was from a little internal seminar that they were promoting, that they were doing, promoting all the different forms of that gender expresses itself, whether that's male, gender non-conforming, transsexual, gender fluid, cisgender, transgender, genderqueer, female, and bigender.
My brain hurts looking at that picture.
And if just in case you think that they're not promoting that, maybe they're doing some sort of market study or something like that and trying to understand society, because we do that. There's two pieces of evidence that really solidify that they're in promotional stance on this, which is one, and this, since they officially joined He Gets Us sometime in the second half of 2021, they've got their socials to be a lot quieter on things. But this happened either just before or right when they were signing up with He Gets Us on June 11th of 2021. Happy Pride Month, as we celebrate and hold true to our values of love, diversity, and inclusion. We are thrilled to share an initiative the team has been working on for the last few weeks. Pride-themed Lerma shirts, stickers, journals, and more. 100% of the proceeds from any of the products sold with these designs this month will go to support the Trevor Project's mission to provide crisis intervention services to LGBT youth. Shop here, lermaagency.threadless.com. And then there's a Lerma Pride image.
Sticker.
We're not even going to comment on the Trevor Project because that's very much a radical thing. But to solidify it, the podcast that we played at the beginning, which, like all the information that we used for this research, is available, link in the description. Go get that, go confirm for yourself. We're not going to listen to this whole podcast, and we're only going to make a few quotes from it. But it's in response to or after or whatever one terminology you want to use of that in-house seminar. And so this is where they really do clarify that they were teaching in a positive sense sexual deviancy. And quotes like, LGBT is a reality, and if we want to be true to our audience, we have to understand how they view themselves and that they understand life. Life is something that is precious. Therefore, you need the freedom to express it your own way. You do you. Now, again, throughout it, they clarify that religion, they present it as something that oppresses sexuality, that holds people back. They claim that sexual deviancy, whether that's transgenderism, homosexuality, so on and so forth, is part of human nature, and that it's only government restrictions that are holding it back. So, Sam, is this just someone that's, like side B Christianity, that's just like, oh, well, we're okay with it as long as you're not actively pursuing that lifestyle or something like that? Or is this radical even in the sphere of secular society?
Yeah, I mean, this is radical in the sphere even of secular society. They're pushing these narratives. It's not just the fact that they're seeking acceptance or seeking a third way. I mean, they're just going in the leftist secular way. Like they're not even trying to hide it at this point. And going and looking at that, I mean, they're obviously woke. They're woke by any standards, not just in the sense of woke within the church, which is generally a bit of a softer woke than that in society. They would be up there with the most woke places in society. But with that, Kyle, that brings me to an interesting question. Who would partner with He Gets Us if it's these three companies, Haven, Glue, and Lerma, that are behind all of this? Who would partner with them?
Well, Sam, I'm glad you asked the question that was in the outline, because now we have a list. Again, you go on the information, we'll have a list that has a lot more partners, but this is just from some graphics that they themselves have. So you can see ministries that they partner with, like Alpha, YouVersion, the Louis Palau Association, Salem Media Group, Outreach Magazine, Billy Graham Center, Christianity Today, Glue. I find it kind of funny that Glue put themselves on there. Relevant Magazine, more and more. Churches, individual churches. It's actually at least one denomination on this list for some reason. But
I mean,
you got Saddleback.
Saddleback.
Yeah, you got Life.Church. Denomination Church on here, Church of God of Prophecy. So Southminster Presbyterian Church. So there's some big churches on here.
Yeah, I mean, you've got Saddleback, that was formerly the biggest church in the SBC. I mean, they just got kicked out of the SBC, but right?
Yeah, we'll see if that sticks.
Yeah, and then you've got Gateway Church, which I think is like one of the top 5 biggest churches in America. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, these are some big churches. What else do we got, though?
Well, then we have denominations, and this one's a little bit less straightforward. But this is formerly on their denominations section of their website. You had them proudly saying these leaders that are promoted or joining with them: the SBC, United Methodist, Seventh-day Adventist Church, Church of God of Prophecy, and not a denomination, but they included it here, the National Association of Evangelicals. Now,
I just love that the SBC and
the association.
I just love that you have the SBC and the Seventh-day Adventists in the same little thing. That there's just some fun irony there.
There's this whole list is actually really funny that they're all put together, and I think it was very intentional. I think they intentionally tried to pick very divergent.
Hey, they tried to stick with their diversity, huh? Equity and inclusion, right there.
So, but again, most of these denied that they have any involvement, but we got other very new in the last, I think, month and a half or 2 months, partners. You got the Assemblies of God has joined and partnered with He Gets Us. You've got the Evangelical Presbyterian Church has partnered with He Gets Us. You've got the, surprise, you got the Salvation Army. If you haven't seen our episode on the Salvation Army, go listen to it. Also, fun fact, Lerma does the ads for the Salvation Army as well.
Of course they do.
So it's all just overlapping stuff. Then, on Glue's platform, the SBC, you can see SBC content right next to He Gets Us. They're not as disentangled as they kind of made it out to be. Although they did, and I need to export this video so it's clear and can be seen. The SBC removed their content when they initially denied being connected to He Gets Us. They removed their content from Glue. Then, ironically, while I was having a conversation with a Glue representative and they were showing me the platform, the SBC content was being added back on, and you can see it being added in real time in the video. So the SBC wanted this distance, then didn't. it's it's all a mess. All of it is a mess. Oh boy, but that's a basic overview of who partners with them.
Right. So that's part one, who partners with them. Stick around because we've got part two coming right up. All right, so we're back here with part two of He Gets Us. And so we're just going to quickly go over, how does Gets Us, how do they describe themselves? How do they describe their campaign? We're going to go through this really quick. We're just going to let them speak for themselves. Kyle, you want to take the first quote?
Yeah, and we'll get into the problematic, because there's going to be a lot of problematic statements here, but everything that we could analyze in them, we're going to be analyzing in different parts of this expose. So first quote, He Gets Us is the result of growing discontent felt by many leaders in the body of Christ. John Lee from Lerma.
All right, and then we have this from He Gets Us. We hope to be the voice of a movement of people who have considered his story and found it deeply and personally transformational. For some, it has been a religious experience, and for others, it is simply a call to strive to love others better. No matter what your response is to his story, we encourage you to explore it from a new perspective. He Gets Us.
Continuing on, we look at the biography of Jesus through a modern lens to find new relevance in often overlooked moments and themes from his life. He Gets Us.
All right. He Gets Us tells us the story of Jesus through a modern lens to present him as a person who fought for radical inclusion and love. Lerma.
He Gets Us retells stories from the Gospels in a modern context, and we do not require the viewer or the reader to accept the divinity of Jesus to begin exploring his story. We simply share the stories of the man that Jesus was and the experiences he had. John Lee, Lerma.
I'm sorry, but on that one, Kyle, I cannot believe that they said that. You don't have to accept the divinity of Jesus. But anyway, what's the goal? What's the goal if He Gets Us? Well, let's continue on here with this John Lee Lerma as he says this: the goal is not Christian conversion. John Lee Lerma.
I mean, that's pretty blunt.
Yep.
Ultimately, the goal is inspiration, not recruitment or conversion. Jason Vanderground from Haven.
All right, here's another quote from Jason. He said this: we believe that investing in the efforts to ensure more people consider his life and movement as inspiration for their own will in turn help improve the lives of those listening and begin to create the kind of cascade of love Jesus himself sought to generate. Jason Vanderground, Haven.
Is the goal that people become Christians? Obviously, but more importantly for now, we need to raise their level of respect for Jesus, and then they'll move. Bill McKendry from Haven. Now, I want to make a quick comment on that one, because unless you have a pretty subjective view of truth, the first part contradicts the other clear statements that everyone's making.
Right.
It's just weird. But even in that, he says something that's true. Yeah. Or that's good. We want to see people become Christians.
But more importantly,
oh, whoa, you're off base. Anyway, next quote.
Yeah, no, that's insane. But we'll continue on with Bill as he says this. Returning to this quote from earlier, right? Okay, here we go. The goal to reintroduce to our culture the real Jesus of the Bible, not the distorted or polarizing version that's so prevalent in America today. Bill McKendry from Haven. Now, Kyle.
Yeah.
when you look at what they're describing, what they're saying, I mean, these are not words that we're putting in their mouths. These are quotes that they're saying. Is there anything that would be extraordinarily concerning with what they're saying? Can you just point out if there's any red flags?
I don't have enough red flags to place on everything, but no. In all reality, they're presenting the squishiest possible Jesus. I don't even just mean like Christian view of Jesus. I mean just the squishiest possible view of Jesus that requires nothing from you, that is just there. They just want to inspire you. They just want to put Jesus out there to inspire. And these are all quotes that aren't from like their public content on He Gets Us. These are all quotes from well, a couple things are. A couple things are from He Gets Us trying to explain what they're doing. But most of these are from interviews where their explicit goal is to tell Christians what He Gets Us is. And in that, they're saying, well, we just want to like inspire people. The goal isn't to convert people.
Right. That's a big problem. And I think that problem that you're really touching on is really seen in the buzzwords that they point out. And I mean, how many of these buzzwords and really keywords that they've used that we've already said so many times? I mean, just, whether it's radical, activist, refugee, rebel, inclusive, movement, equity, inequity, equity and inclusion, justice, injustice, identity, all these things, these are the words that they're using repeatedly. Now, are these words necessarily bad words?
No, I mean, they're not inherently negative words. But the problem is that all those words, you just rattled off, not all of them on their own, but in a certain context, they will. But they have immediately strike images in people's minds.
Right.
And especially, I mean, you have some of the most obvious ones like activist, refugee. Those immediately spark images in people's minds nowadays. And you can't not know that, especially as companies, these are companies that do research and ad campaigns and things like this. They partner, we didn't mention this as one of their partners, but they partner with Barna Research Group that does some of their research for them. So they can't not know that these words spark specific images in people's minds. And going back to something we said in the introduction, that's why it's important when you read their content to read it for the audience that they're gunning for, which is people who do not believe in Christianity. They're not Christians. They don't believe that Jesus is who He says He is. So when that segment of people hear these words, they have no ability to fix it in their mind and make it orthodox. They only hear the cultural version of it. So what are they going to do when they hear that?
Right.
It's exactly what they've said. They're going to hear a modern Jesus.
Right. This is, He Gets Us is ultimately a cultural tool that is for those who don't need or who don't know Jesus. They do need Jesus, but they don't know Jesus, but their goal is to not get them saved. They've explicitly stated that they're not trying to get them saved. So the only thing that they really need is something that they don't want to give them. But that is He Gets Us in their own words. Stick with us here because part 3 is coming up and we're going to see how they're freeing Jesus from His church. All right, and here we are back with part 3 of He Gets Us, and we have freeing Jesus from His church. And we're going to start off with this quote from Bill McHenry from Haven, who we've heard a few things with. Just sit back and listen to this here. He says this: the church needs to understand that this campaign isn't for them. It's for Jesus. It's to reach an audience that we're not currently reaching. All right, Kyle, we're about to separate Christ from His bride, from the church, is what we're seeing in this. Tell us how this sets that up.
if it's a campaign for Jesus, it's a campaign for Jesus's bride, for his church. If it's a campaign for his church, it's a campaign for him. You can't separate the bride from the groom. You can't separate the head from the body. If you separate the head from the body dies. If you separate, and the head dies. If you separate the bride from the groom, well, all you're going to do is result in divorce, adultery, and all sorts of problematic things. So there's a reason that Jesus attaches himself to his church.
Right.
Absolutely attaches himself to his church. And you can't disconnect what God has connected. What God has brought together, let no man separate.
Right. So in keeping that in mind, what is it that they really teach about the church, or the research that they found, as maybe the better way to put that, of He Gets Us? What is it that they found?
Well, and let's look at this graphic. So they really set a wedge between things and start to paint this picture that the church is bad, problematic, that might even be a hindrance to faith. Now, they don't go as far as to explicitly say it, but they kind of just go, well, the research says this, and this is people's opinion. But then they kind of push the question, leading questions. They use leading questions. But let's look at this graphic. This graphic they use in multiple different places about their research into what skeptics say and think about Christians and the church, that they're hypocritical and judgmental. They don't want to hear from Christians. They don't defend or promote Christians. They struggle or reject Jesus' divinity. Again, this is put in the category of kind of a problem. It's a problem. Jesus' divinity is a problem. We need to get rid of that to reach people. Reject personal relationship with Jesus. One bad experience with a Christian can shut down the conversation. Now, about Jesus, this is what skeptics think of Jesus, apparently. Everyone has opinion about Jesus. I'll agree with that. Jesus is for everyone, loves us all. That's not that's what they're saying skeptics say. Skeptics say Jesus is for everyone. He loves us all. His teachings are positive for society. Oh, skeptics think Jesus is positive for society while rejecting him. A worthy example that you can reach the skeptic by meeting their felt needs. The issue isn't Jesus. 50% are open to learning more about Jesus. But are they really?
If not the Jesus of the Bible.
Well, exactly. They present this idea that people outside the church, they know Jesus' teaching and they like it. They just don't like those hypocritical, judgmental Christians. But if they love Jesus' teachings, then that means they would love Jesus and they'd be a part of his church because they would have submitted to Christ. So they don't actually love his teaching. But how does He Gets Us present it? So let's read again from them, their words. What do they say? Let's read how they paint it. And again, they paint this picture of the church having a wrong view of Jesus, the world having a right view of Jesus. The research is very clear. Non-Christians are attracted to the story of Jesus and the ideas he taught, but they don't perceive Christians as representing his values and thus don't see the story of Jesus as particularly relevant to or valuable for their lives. John Lee from Lerma.
Yeah. So here's another quote from He Gets Us. They say this: Christians have left an impression that Jesus belongs only to the people who step inside the church buildings on Sunday mornings, which is simply not true, is what they say from He Gets Us. Oh my goodness, Kyle, that's so neo-Gnostic, but we should probably continue on.
Yeah, that's we're going to see a similar statement. I think we'll comment once we see that similar statement. But people respond to the person of Jesus, again, from He Gets Us itself.
And here's another one. And while they agree that Jesus' teachings are positive for society as a whole, and that the world would be better if we lived out of the principles of the gospel message, they don't see Christians practicing what they preach. He Gets Us.
Yeah. people who reject the gospel know what the gospel teaches. We'll go with that. We know that people who are skeptical about faith can positively influence the work of the church based on scripture, historical precedent, and evidence in our present moment. From revising harmful doctrines to advocating for the vulnerable, healthy skepticism, both within and outside of the church, have catalyzed Christians to live as more faithful disciples.
Conversely, when those who claim the name of Christ have lost their way, leaving behind the call of Micah 6:8 to act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God, it has been questioning people who have held the church accountable in recent years. Those within and outside the church have been at the forefront of calls for transparency and reform when it comes to issues like warped financial teachings, exclusionary theology, and sexual abuse. He gets us. You know, Kyle, these are some interesting things that they're pointing out, but they are trying to divorce Jesus from his body. They are trying to remove Jesus from his bride. They're trying to separate those two things. They're trying to keep separate the church and Jesus. But ultimately, as I keep reading this, what keeps coming to mind is really the whole concept that Rick Warren came up with, which we know that Rick Warren is woke. You can find out stuff like that at enemieswithinthechurch.com and go to Wikipedia, and you can see a thing on Rick Warren, a bio that we have on him. But it really reminds me of this whole concept of going and making the church a business model, and they're going and trying to find the customer, but the customer is the unsaved person. And so they're trying to say that the unsaved person is right in forcing this on the church, but they're incorporating it not just with like what Rick Warren initially did, which wasn't a blatant wokeness, it was just wrongness, is now they're infusing that felt need, that seeker sensitive, and trying to make a church, except it's not a church, for the unsaved. That's what they're trying to do.
Yeah, and in doing that, to appeal to the unsaved, they elevate the unsaved to the point where the unsaved are sitting. I mean, read some of those statements again, and you can read them all in context. Again, we provide all of that. But they're really presenting those outside the church as sitting above the church in judgment of the church, looking down on the church and being able to say, no, you don't understand what Jesus was teaching. We understand what Jesus was teaching. Well, then what's the point of Christianity? What's the point of Christianity if those outside the church have a greater understanding than those inside the church?
Yeah. Once you accept Jesus, you now know less about Jesus. That's what they're trying to say. Once you actually know him, you now know less. It's a really goofy presentation, but let's keep. They've got some more to say about the church. Let's see what they have to say about this. Mm-hmm. So here's one from John Lee, once again from Lerma. He says this: they experience Christians as judgmental, oppressive, hypocritical, power-hungry political ideologues with a superiority complex.
My goodness, someone's got the thesaurus out today.
Yeah.
Christians have left an impression that Jesus belongs only to the people who step inside the church building on Sundays morning, which simply is not true.
And he continues with this quote.
Which I just realized we read that quote twice, but I think it's worth reading twice. So read this next one and let's make a comment.
Yeah. We see people who claim to be followers of Jesus taking his open invite and turning it into an exclusive club. Well, yeah. I mean, well, yes, you're either inside the church, inside the body of Christ, or you're not. You know, ultimately, what I'm really afraid that he gets us is really pushing with all of this, Kyle, is I'm really afraid what they're hinting at, maybe more than hinting at, is universalism.
they edge way too close to it, because ultimately, and now here's the thing. Speculation on my point, but I think they honestly don't realize this. But what they're doing is an attack on the exclusivity of the gospel.
Right.
And that's exactly what you're talking about. It's universalism. When the gospel is not exclusive, as in when it is not the only way to be saved, the only way to have access to everything that, salvation entails, the only way to become part of Christ's bride, part of his body, then your only other option is universalism. And I don't think they realize that they're attacking the exclusivity of the gospel, but they're making Jesus so inclusive that you don't even need to be a part of you don't even need to be his bride to get his love. I mean, they're presenting, I don't even want to say this out loud because it's a blasphemous statement, but they're presenting Christ as a whore.
Yeah.
And that's a weighty thing to say, but that really is how they're presenting Jesus. He's not someone who's exclusively for his bride. He's someone that, you don't need to marry to get access to, that you can get all the benefits of the marriage outside of it.
Right. And I mean, let's not forget, Jesus made it very clear, plain and simple in John 14:6, when he said, I am the way, the truth, the life. No man comes to the Father but by me. That's an exclusive club. I mean, it shouldn't be a club, but it's the idea of it's exclusive. It's separation. It's either you have Jesus or you don't have Jesus. There's no in between, and there is a distinction between the two. But he gets us has a problem with that. I mean, just listen to this next quote where it says this: whether it's hypocrisy and discrimination in the church, or scandals, both real and perceived among religious leaders, or polarization of our politics, many have relegated Jesus from the world's greatest love story to just another tactic used to intensify and to deepen or intensify our deep cultural divisions. What they're trying to say is that when Jesus goes and makes a stand, that's just creating cultural divisions. That's the problem with our society.
They preach a unholy God. And I don't mean that. I mean that in the literal sense of the word. Holy, as in set apart.
Right.
They preach a God that is not holy. He is not set apart. He's common.
Right. Well, he's not.
He
that's
asks
wrong.
nothing
but
of
that's
you.
What they're presenting.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, let's continue on. Words like agnostic, doubter, and skeptic can stoke anxiety and concern in some Christians. They may feel as though their faith is being threatened, or like it is now their responsibility to convince someone of the truth of the gospel. Instead of viewing skeptics as the other, the church has the opportunity to embrace them as fully loved children of God. Again, it's an attack on the exclusivity of the gospel. If you want to be a child of God, then you have to submit yourself to him. You have to be grafted into the family. Yeah, you're not simply by existing.
I mean, John 1:12 says, but as many as received him, Jesus, to those he gave the right to become children of God, to those who believe on his name. They're rejecting that verse with that statement. They're straight up rejecting
among others.
Yeah. I mean, that's not the only verse, and that's not the only statement. But the problem is, what we're seeing with He Gets Us is that they are pushing away from the fact that in order to become a child of God, which means in order to be saved, that's being born again, that's being adopted into the family of God, you must accept Jesus.
Yeah.
They're trying to bring those who don't know Jesus into that family of God. And the Bible clearly says that they're not there. That's a dangerous place to be. It
reminded me of something.
Do you want to touch on it? Or is it for a next section?
It makes enough sense to say here, but my friend when trying to explain what Tang was, the powdered juice drink Tang, he was trying to explain it to someone else, and his description, he finally just went, "It's like orange juice without the orange juice." Lo and behold, we give that guy Tang, and he goes, "Oh my goodness, it is like orange juice without the orange juice."
Yep.
They're trying to present a salvation without the salvation.
That's right. So, which I mean is true. Anytime you divorce the body of Christ from Christ, you're divorcing that salvation from Christ, because he is the savior of the body. That's who he is and what he does. But that's section 3, freeing Jesus from his church, or part 3. And stick with us, because we've got part 4 coming up here. Was Jesus God? Because it actually gets worse. So part 4, here we come. All right, now we've got part 4 of He Gets Us. Was Jesus God? Was Jesus God? That's the question, Kyle. And what does He Gets Us have to say about was Jesus God?
Oh, it just starts going down. Now, again, I want to remind people of 2 things, which is, 1, this is a case that we're building. So you need to don't hang your hat on each individual point, but look at all the pieces of evidence we give that paint a picture of what they're describing. And the second one, again, is this is predominantly what they're presenting to the outside world, to the unsaved. This is the view of Christ that they're pushing. This first quote specifically isn't, but it really sets the tone. We do it the same way Jesus and his disciples did. We begin by meeting people where they are, by not expecting a non-Christian audience to be ready to meet a savior, but rather by creating a campaign that invites them to explore the story of this man who experienced the same challenges of the human condition that we experience every day. A man who decided that in the face of poverty and persecution, he would create a radically inclusive love movement that is still impacting the world thousands of years later. A man who built this movement by rejecting the human path to success of power and wealth. A man who identifies with the poor and the excluded and the marginalized. A man who died forgiving his murderers. So,
and who said,
Sam,
who
do you
said
think
that?
that sets a bit of a tone? Oh, that's from John Lee of Lerma.
Okay, I wasn't sure if that was from John Lee from Lerma or if that's from Antonio Gramsci. I'm sorry. I was just going, man, this is cultural Marxism right here. Especially that last half, but the theological points that just really stood out to me. Is this whole idea of the emphasis of a man who decided, in both going and calling him a man and decided. Though Jesus, we do believe in the hypostatic union. He was 100% man. We understand that. But he's also 100% God. We don't leave him just as mankind. There is a divinity there.
Yep.
The other thing is that they're like, the only thing Jesus did was to bring a love movement. I mean, what did Jesus go around singing Love Train? Is that what they think? I mean, that's it's a love movement, and the only thing that starts going through my mind is Jesus singing and dancing Love Train. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. And we'll talk about their kind of presentation of the gospel and salvation a little bit later, but we first have to just get a baseline of who's Jesus.
Right.
And all I have to say is I think Arius would really like the He Gets Us campaign.
Oh, where's St. Nick when you need him? Anyway, This next quote, moving on from the Nicene Creed, moving on to this quote. This is more of an implication, and so don't take this quote just as to what we say. Look at the whole argument that we're bringing up, but it is important to point out this implication. It says this quote, and this is from He Gets Us. He exercised a level of self-control that few have. And this is bringing up the implication here. This is implying that others have the same level of self-control as Jesus. So therefore, either other humans could obtain that, or Jesus, that level of self-control, or Jesus doesn't have a perfect self-control. And I know this seems a little nitpicky, perhaps, in looking at it, but as we go through these other quotes, I think you're going to understand why we're bringing up this in the implication.
Yeah.
This is not a great implication here, what they're saying.
Yeah. And again, read this through the perspective of someone that doesn't know the gospel, doesn't know Jesus. And how would they read that? Right. Now, continuing on, another quote from He Gets Us. It's hard to imagine how he swallowed his rage. Again, presenting a similar kind of concept of this Jesus that, well, in technical terms, we'd call it was Jesus peccable or impeccable? Could he have potentially sinned, or was sin an impossibility for him? Now, if most Orthodox Christians would agree Jesus was, as God, impeccable, impossible for him to sin. But they present a Jesus that not only had the possibility of sin, but they're painting this idea that Jesus struggled to not sin. But again, let's continue on with the quotes and let them make the case.
If anyone knew the temptation to retaliate, it was Jesus. That's what they say. Now, once again, here, one of the issues is this whole distinction between temptation and in sin. It's of course not wrong to be tempted, but they're trying to kind of bring this out a little bit more, really just try to bring out the humanity in Jesus, specifically about retaliation, which is interesting. This next one, I think, is one of the most interesting quotes, though, Kyle. I maybe you want to go more on the retaliate, but
we could go more, but let's just get the next one, because this has been a pretty famous quote, or quotes like it, from He Gets Us, which is Jesus suffered anxiety. This is specifically one I pulled from Lerma, one of their presentations of He Gets Us. But that in particular is all over the place. They really make a big emphasis of Jesus struggled with anxiety. Jesus experienced anxiety. I thought this one was just the wording, Jesus suffered anxiety, was interesting. But again, it presents this Jesus that struggled. That, struggled in the same way that we do. Like this sort of, we can't control it. It comes upon us and we can't resist it sort of struggle with emotion, or, anxiety still is an emotion. But
the only narrative that I can think of that you could potentially apply to this would, of course, be Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, where he's going and he's sweating drops of blood because he's about to go and to face the cross, because he's about to become sin for us who knew no sin. That's incredibly different than any anxiety that we could ever go and suffer. Like it's not the same thing. Jesus wasn't going around as a nervous wreck. He wasn't going around as somebody who was, I'm just so nervous, I don't want to go there. In fact, we think of the story of Lazarus being raised from the dead. Jesus says, no, we need to go see him. And the disciples, they're anxious. They're like, Jesus, we don't want to go back there. They throw rocks at us. And Jesus goes, no, we got to go raise him. Because Lazarus is sleeping. They're like, well, if he's sleeping, maybe he'll get better. We don't want to go and have rocks thrown at us. Jesus, let's not do that. And he goes, well, no, he's dead. I got to go raise him from the dead. That's basically what Jesus was going and saying. the anxiety that they're trying to present is not anything what Jesus went through. That anxiety that they're trying to present would
Yeah.
be the result of a fall. And though Jesus had humanity,
Yeah.
he didn't have a sin nature.
Yeah, he wasn't that's one of the biggest things that people struggle with in communicating who Jesus is. And they make this mistake because they never clarify that he's not born with a sin nature. He's not. We far too often think of humanity as fallen humanity, when in reality,
Right.
fallen humanity is not how humanity is supposed to be. We're less than fully human. Jesus
Right.
was actually in a very real sense, Jesus was more human than we
Yes.
are in our fallen state.
Right.
So he doesn't have, there's certain things when they say, oh, well, Jesus was human. So no. You have to figure out what human nature is, true humanity is, and not what fallen humanity is.
Right.
Now, another problem is when they present because they link his anxiety, they do link it to the story of Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane.
Right.
But they never bring up the fact that he's experiencing the weight of the world's sin upon him.
Right.
Being in a almost literal way crushed under the weight.
And it wasn't the cross that he was anxious about. It was the spiritual aspect. And I don't even know if anxious is the right word, but he was emotionally in agony, but I don't know if it was really anxiety that he was having at that moment. And it was the spiritual thing that was going on. It wasn't the physical stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of important, that I don't think that they're presenting, because otherwise they present it in a different way. Should we move on? Or
yeah, we should move on.
Well, love your neighbor as yourself wasn't something that Jesus came up with. I don't know if you knew that. It was around long before him, and it was written into the Jewish law. He gets us.
This is why I don't like red letter Bibles.
Oh, you know, Kyle, how long has Jesus been around?
Well, in his own words, before Abraham, I am. Not I was. He used the name of God. I am who I am. To not just say, oh yeah, you know, I existed before. No, I've always existed.
Right.
That's Jesus's answer to it. I've always existed.
So when it comes to the divinity of Jesus Christ, what claim are they making here?
They're making, again, Arius would love this statement and affirm this statement just enthusiastically, because they're saying that Jesus, now I'm sure they'd probably try and pull some mental gymnastics of, oh, we're just saying Jesus on earth, Jesus in his human form. But you can't separate them like that. That's still the same Jesus. He didn't magically become a new Jesus. So they're either presenting Arianism and he's an elevated man, or they're presenting like kenotic theology and he literally emptied his divine nature. It's gone.
Right.
And he's just a human while on earth.
They're destroying the hypostatic union somewhere. And
Exactly.
It's either a Philippians 2 error or it's a Nicene pre-Nicene error. Well, actually, the Arians stayed around after that too, but we don't need to get into church history.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that is an incredible quote to really see how they really ultimately are not presenting the divinity of Jesus Christ. They're overemphasizing the humanity and divorcing the humanity from the divinity of Jesus.
Yeah, it's a bizarre one to say the least. But let's continue on. Like, we haven't made the case already, but let's really hammer it home. He understands the struggles people face because he's struggled with the same things. Now, have we covered this
We've
one
gone
already?
over this a lot.
I mean,
but not not in this podcast necessarily, but just to simply like restate our position for what I feel like is the millionth time for the woke. It's Jesus, of course, is a sympathetic high priest. It tells us that, but he doesn't sympathize with our sin. He sympathizes with us being tempted. He sympathizes with living within a fallen world, but he doesn't sympathize with sin. He was at all points tempted, yet without sin.
And again, he never even had a desire to sin. And
right.
Because granted, a desire to sin in and of itself is still sin. Right. Jesus himself clarifies that. If you desire to sleep with another woman, you've committed adultery in your heart.
Right.
If you hate your brother, you've committed murder in your heart. So they make the claim that they're presenting the true Jesus from the Bible, but they're divorcing Jesus from his own words.
Right. And the Bible does warn about that. He says that, it says in 1 Corinthians, I'm afraid that you've believed in, actually it's 2 Corinthians, that you've believed in another Jesus. It's a Jesus, same name, but a different person. And what he's saying is that you're divorcing him from his word. But here's another quote. He gets us looks to change this by starting the conversations about the authentic Jesus who loves the unlovable and understands human frailties because he experienced them. He gets us.
So very much just another rehash of the previous point. Let's do one more. Jesus was no stranger to stress and overwhelm. The social pressure was immense. He was constantly bombarded with questions. He had to be intentional about his words. Jesus lived in times of civil unrest. He carried a lot of weight on his shoulders.
They're attacking the capacity of Jesus.
Yeah.
This is bad. This is bad. This is so much deeper than just a Super Bowl ad that wasn't great. And I hope people really start to see this, Kyle, because the capacity of Jesus, he just overwhelmed. I'm not even really sure that I know they're not using that word within its proper connotation or proper grammatical use, but like, what?
Yeah.
Jesus has a greater capacity. He's God.
Yeah. And you are right about the use of the word is important, because now I disagree with this use of the word as well. But if I remember right, it's the NIV when I think it's in the Garden of Gethsemane, uses the word overwhelm. I think he says, my soul is overwhelmed even to the point of death, which is not a great translation, because that's a way more, overwhelmed is a way more ambiguous word than what he actually says. But even in that case of one translation using the word, but using it in a different context, and even then, I don't think they're using it well. I think the NIV way too often undershoots and makes things way too simplified. But I don't think that's the way they're even using it here. I think they're using it in one that attacks the capacity of Jesus, his capacity to handle things in pretty much any sense. And then, I mean, they go on, he had to be intentional about his words. Well, yes, in a technical way, in a technical sense, he did have to be intentional. He was always intentional. If the Bible, if God struggles to be intentional, then the Bible isn't inerrant and insufficient.
Right.
Blows
yes,
up.
God says what he means and he means what he says.
Yeah. But the way they're phrasing it here, he had to be intentional about his words, makes it seem like Jesus was, there's an uncertainty. There's an implied uncertainty in it. And with a lot of these things, there's implications. And why we can really come down, now the words they choose are bad, but we can really hammer them on the implications is, again, they're talking to a non-Christian audience who has none of the Christian implications to put on it. So therefore, they're going to interpret it one direction. And so we can examine it through that singular direction. So what, kind of wrapping this up, Sam, what do you think about how they present Jesus? Are they presenting a divine savior, or are they presenting just another human?
Yeah, they're really just trying to humanize Jesus so that he can sympathize with others, so that people can just simply relate to Jesus. But they really are trying to strip him of his divinity in order to make him seem more relatable. It's kind of the reason, like to get a little bit nerdy on this. It's the reason why Superman doesn't make good movies today. He's not relatable to people. The idea of a set apart values. In reality, Superman was a cultural type of Christ that they were trying to make. And under a more Christianized culture, he was much more attractive, and people related to him more because they wanted to see, wow, that superhero who could never be defeated and overcame issues and overcame problems. Now, Batman, who is obviously a superhero who has no powers other than immense, riches and some above average abilities. But we can relate to him because, he can get beat up. Bruce Wayne can get destroyed and everything like that. That's what they're trying to make Jesus look like. And I know that's nerdy, but they're taking this from a cultural approach. That's what they're trying to go and do. And the problem is that they're inherently changing the nature of who Jesus is, and they're taking away the saving part.
Oh yeah.
It takes
like
both parts to save, but they're specifically taking away that ability to save. Like he had to be man. We're not sitting out here divorcing.
They're doing it more.
On the other side.
They're doing it more than that, though, because like everything the woke do, what they claim to be promoting, they actually degrade and attack.
Right.
And functionally, the way they present Jesus' humanity is actually weaker than what it should be. They not only do they remove Jesus' divinity, but they also dehumanize him. And unfortunately, if Jesus is not fully human either, then he can't save us. So they lose on both of them. Both of them.
So now we've seen what He Gets Us says about Jesus and what they believe about the divinity of Jesus. And that was part 4. Next coming up is part 5. And we're going to see basically what they say doesn't matter what you believe about Jesus.
Stay tuned.
All right. Well, now we have got part 5 of He Gets Us. Does it matter what I believe about Jesus or what you believe about Jesus? That's the question that we really need to answer of what He Gets Us says, because we've seen what they've said about Jesus and his divinity. We've really seen how they divorced Jesus from his church. So now, do they even care does it really matter even what people believe about Jesus? Well, Kyle, what say you? Well, not what do you say about this, but what do you say about what He Gets Us says? Because I know what your answer would be.
Well, let's jump right in, and starting off with another quote from our friend John Lee at Lerma. We start by reminding people that whether you believe that Jesus was God or a prophet or just a man, his story demonstrates that we are capable of this miracle of unconditional love, and that the pursuit of Jesus is a lifelong journey to perfecting that love.
So let's give another
It's got
quote.
problems.
That's got a lot of problems. Let's give another quote from John Lee Lerma, from Lerma. Jesus was an inspiring and human figure that we can learn a lot from, regardless of what your beliefs are. Now, I think these two quotes really go together, because the big thing as to what he's saying, wouldn't you say, Kyle, is it doesn't really matter what you believe about Jesus. And the whole thing is that we're just trying to follow the example of Jesus. And I know we talked about this just a little bit last episode, when I asked the question of, where I said, it seems like they're getting rid of substitutionary atonement. Once again, these quotes would really aim at the idea that substitutionary atonement doesn't matter. It's really just an example.
Yeah. At the minimum, the bare minimum, they're actively hiding it.
Right.
Not just like presenting a weak presentation or a weak gospel. No, they're actively hiding it. They're trying to bury it. This little light of mine, they heard that song backwards because they've hid it under everything they can find.
Right.
Well, let's continue on. He Gets Us is a diverse group of Jesus followers with a wide variety of faith journeys and lived experiences. Our work represents the input from Christians who believe that Jesus is the Son of God, as well as many others, though not Christian, share a deep admiration for the man that Jesus was, and we are deeply inspired and curious to explore his story. That's from He Gets Us official documents. Sam, just read the next one and then we'll make a comment.
No matter what you believe about God or Christianity, consider this. What might we learn today from a person like Jesus? He Gets Us. Kyle, I don't know if I can do this.
It's so, like, it hurts. It legitimately hurts to hear some of the things they're saying. Like I said earlier, I mean, they're making pretty blasphemous implications. They're hiding the gospel. I don't know who this Jesus is, but this is important. Why it's important to study the true Jesus, so you can see the fakes that are out there. But I mean, they admit that they have non-Christians that are working on this, that are, they really emphasize, it's like every time they say it, there's this stressing on that he was a man. They don't just have admiration for Jesus. They have admiration for Jesus, the man. Well, of course the non-Christians have admiration for Jesus, the man, because they reject Jesus, the God. But unfortunately, that means you reject all of Jesus.
Right. And it's almost like it's a campaign. Oh, it is. But a campaign to get people to just see Jesus as a guy, as a man. He's just like you. Like that. That's really.
Hey, man, Jesus is just another one of the guys.
I guess you could say their campaign is He Gets Us. It's brilliant campaigning. I'll be honest. It is brilliant campaigning. The problem is that they're just campaigning for somebody who's not described in the Bible, for a Jesus who's not there.
Yeah.
It is brilliant. Like they do get their point across. It's just they make the wrong point.
Well, they have a wrong assessment to the problem, and they provide wrong solutions because of that. I mean, They missed the mark on both. We're over here having a rifle competition, and they're 3 states away having an archery competition.
Right.
They're not even in the same category.
And talk about missing the mark. Here's a great quote that demonstrates that. Here's from He Gets Us, says this: some believe Jesus lived a perfect life. For others, that's a stretch. Either way, as we searched for themes to share, it became apparent to us that Jesus set a high bar for himself and for others. It doesn't matter if Jesus was perfect or not. The big thing we need to see is that, he just raises the bar. Wait a minute. That is not the story that Jesus said. He says, look, my standard is so high, nobody can reach it. For all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. For all have sinned, except for Jesus, of course. And I don't know. I'm almost jaw dropped by the. If this wasn't eternal souls in the balance, I would say that this is silly by how far they're missing the mark. But souls are in the balance, so it's not silly.
And that's what I find so disturbing about this. And He Gets Us isn't going away.
No.
They have plans to keep it going. Now, we didn't include this anywhere in here because I haven't seen an official documentation of this, but multiple news places are now reporting that their budget went from 100 million to 150 million. Now they have $1 billion and they want to keep it going for upwards of a decade. None of those are providing firsthand sources. So I don't know if that's true or not. Either way, they are planning on this going for some long period of time. It's not going away, and they want to grow it. And they're actively working to recruit churches, to recruit ministries, to recruit denominations, and grow this thing. So it's really important to know these dirty details and not just know the surface level details that are problematic. But it goes from problematic to outright heresy.
Right. And we don't have time to discuss this, obviously, on this podcast, but this really does make sense strategically for them to do that, to have this He Gets Us as kind of this coalition that's more of a neo-Gnostic coalition, and that's more openly woke, because it would be somewhat of a natural step from the woke of the Gospel Coalition, which was a lot more weighted on the intellectual. This is going to be a lot more weighted on the people in the pews. We're going to reach you with Super Bowl ads. And we're going to start this coalition of He Gets Us that is going to be just this woke machine that moves forward. Well, yeah. It really does make sense strategically that they would shift away from the Gospel Coalition. I mean, especially because they've been taking hits and everything else because they tried to, we don't, like I said, we don't have time to discuss all that. Never mind. Let's get back into He Gets Us. Sorry about that.
Let's continue on. Let's read another quote. He Gets Us simply invites all to consider the story of a man who created a radical love movement that continues to impact the world thousands of years later. Many churches focus on Jesus' experiences, but you don't have to go to church or even believe in Christianity to find value in them. Whether you consider yourself a Christian, a believer in another faith, a spiritual explorer, or not religious or spiritual in any way, we invite you to hear about Jesus and be inspired by his example. Now, and I think they would probably make this defense that we're just casting a broad net. But added together with everything else we've already looked at, and no, I think that's pretty well destroyed. But even in this, Sam, I mean, are they casting a broad net, or are they just lowering the bar off of salvation and onto just inspiration?
You know, I don't even know. I think in attempting to cast a broad net, they ended up setting up a chain link fence and tried to keep a mosquito out. And not only can the mosquito fly over it, but it can fly right through it. Like, I mean, they're not catching anything with this. They are changing the gospel from Jesus died on the cross for our sins, was buried, he rose again the third day to provide a way of salvation for all who would believe, to, hey, you know, this Jesus guy is pretty cool. he can inspire you. You could have a quote for Jesus.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really what they've moved to. I mean, this is just a marketing ploy of positivity. Trying to go and say, it doesn't matter what you believe, doesn't matter what your identity is, doesn't matter anything. You just have to kind of, we just want to make sure you're exposed to a quote from Jesus. And that's what they're calling. It's not good. It's not good here. And
No.
we got another quote on this, and then we really get to see a little bit on what is the gospel, according to them. But this is what he gets us says. For some people, that inspiration might evoke curiosity about what Jesus taught. Some might even want to have a conversation with someone about spirituality or join a local class about the Christian faith at the local church. And so we offer those options, but that's not our mission. He gets us.
Which directly contradicts things that they've said. They make this claim of, we're setting it up. We're setting people up so that you, the local church, the local Christian, can then knock it out of the park. And we're setting it up, we're using glue so you can connect to local churches and blah, 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 and all this stuff. But they explicitly say, no, that's not our mission. That's just an option, but that's not our mission. That's not our purpose. That's not our point. So somewhere in this, they are lying. Somewhere they are lying. And honestly, I don't care which part is a lie. I don't care if this statement was a lie or their statements about trying to connect people to local churches and support local churches so they can do missions work is a lie. I don't care, because what they're presenting to the outside world is garbage that is sending them to hell, not to reconciliation with Christ.
And so let's see what, that's what they say about what you have to believe about Jesus, or if it matters if you believe about Jesus. How about what is the gospel? And I think we're going to really see this question of, is it salvation or is it just motivation or inspiration?
Yeah. What's their goal? And so let's continue on. Words will always have their place. It seems that acts of mercy and sacrifice hold power that the most perfectly strung together sentences cannot attain. This is what James means when he states that faith without works is dead. Don't comment on that one, Sam. Just read the next quote, because they pair together pretty well. So read the next quote, and then let's comment on the idea that they both make.
Okay, and this is from John Lee from Lerma. He says this: most of us recognize that we only know his love because a Christian in our lives loved us in some confounding and beautiful way that made Jesus real and alive to us. So, Kyle,
what is the idea that they present in both of these quotes?
The big idea that they're presenting is a cliche that many of our listeners actually might believe and believe wrongly. And he gets us as really showing why this cliche is so dangerous and wrong, and why you need to get it out of your vocabulary. And that cliche is, always be a witness and use words when necessary. Romans 10 is clear. Without faith, I just completely blanked on Romans 10 here for a second here. Faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God is what it tells us in Romans 10. In order to have faith, which it takes faith to be saved, you must hear the word of God. And they're trying to divorce that and say, you just need random acts of kindness, which brings me back to a point that I've been really, I'm concerned about this. There's many things that I'm concerned about, but I really think, even though they would claim differently when talking to them, I don't really believe they believe in a substitutionary atonement. I really don't.
Yeah, at least somewhere along the line,
Someone
well, I mean,
doesn't.
they already said that non-Christians are contributing to the project, which is scary to me because they make things like sermons and other stuff like that. So is someone overlooking that? Like, what's going on? Who's doing what? But I'm trying to wrap my mind around this, and I can't.
Right.
Because somewhere along the line, there are people that obviously do not believe in the true gospel. They do not believe in penal substitutionary atonement, that that's the way of salvation. And there's obviously a large contingent of people that are producing the content specifically that believe in, at the best, believe in a social gospel.
Right. At best.
At best.
Well, what's our next quote here, Kyle?
Okay. Knowing his days on earth were numbered, Jesus entrusted his ministry to these men and women. And the message was simple: love each other so that the world can know me. And that's from He Gets Us itself.
All right.
Now, is there Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Here's another quote. You never judged me or condemned me for my sins. Thank you for entrusting me with your perfect love for others. Help me to avoid judging people or condemning people, but let me be ready to share your love with them in every moment. He gets us. Go for it, Kyle.
Well, on the quote I read, they're obviously echoing. There's a specific verse that actually there's a couple that they're echoing. But you will know, the world will know that you're my disciples by your love for one another. But is that what they're actually saying? And again, that's an outwardly facing statement. And then the one that you read was just bizarre. You never judged me or condemned me for my sins?
It's almost
Sam, reading. Was there a point when we...
Yeah. I don't think that they have even an elementary version of understanding, but also with these two quotes, I mean, situation ethics runs deep in He Gets Us. In the historic term of Fletcher putting an emphasis on love and making morality be judged by love. And you can see that here. It's not based on holiness. It's not based on God's moral standard. It's based on the mushy gushy feelings.
Yep. It's a love judges truth. And love, I don't know. I'm getting to a point where I'm so frustrated with trying to deal with this, but they're presenting the vaguest, like you said, mushy gushy love. They never define it, and love judges everything else. Love is superior. That Christ, they read in 1 John where he says that God is love, and they just stop there and they go, oh, yep, God's love. He has no other attribute besides love.
Right. Well, let's finish up with these last two quotes. You want me to take the first one? I forgot where we were at. So throughout, and this is from He Gets Us, throughout our shared history, Jesus has represented the ultimate good that mankind is capable of aspiring to.
Let's continue on. Jesus knew that if we focused on our own faults and weaknesses, we could become more empathetic towards others. We'd recognize that, like us, every person has challenges and struggles that we can relate to. And that's how Jesus' radical love is demonstrated today.
Whew.
What?
If you close your eyes long enough, you can see it. Nope, you
You mean
can't.
if I close my eyes so long that I fall asleep?
I mean, I'm not even sure where they're getting these ideas. It's literally, hey, let's just use the word Jesus, say the agenda that we want, and use the word love, and people will accept it. And the problem is that people will. That's the problem.
Well, yeah, it's a Jesus that's appealing because it's a Jesus that is not the all holy, all righteous God that does not demand anything from us, whose standards we can meet on our own power, who just wants to inspire us to live better. And if we just love people more, then we're following him.
Right. I mean, this is spiritual limbo. We're seeing how low can they get the bar? How low can they bring down the standard of God? It's all about just going and seeing that other people have faults. You have faults. You know, some of us believe that Jesus has faults, is what they're saying. You know, some of us don't believe Jesus was even perfect. So that's really what this is all about, is just admitting that we all have faults and reaching down in love. Well, it's really about seeing that there's a perfect Lamb of God who is put upon the altar or the cross. And he was there and he bled and he died for our sins because we couldn't make it, because we fell short of God's glory, and that wages of sin is death. And he took the death that we deserved for us. That's what the gospel's about. And of course, he was buried and he rose again. He defeated and conquered death and sin. But that's not what they're presenting. They're missing the true demonstration of love that Romans 5:8 tells us.
Yeah. And could that be because they have a different understanding of reality than the Bible presents? Could that be because they operate within a more woke framework?
I think it could be. I think I'm getting convinced now. But that's part 5 for He Gets Us. Part 6, we're going to see, really, if you haven't seen it yet, how they really push Jesus to be a social justice warrior, and really the construct of the Bible to be a social justice warrior handbook. So stick with us for part 6. All right, now for part 6 of Jesus, of He Gets Us. And we're going to be looking at Jesus, the social justice warrior. And for those of you who have held on this entire time with us, we appreciate it. This is the last leg of the race. So we're excited to go and to dive into this. But this is some interesting stuff here. And of course, we've already established that the companies that operate He Gets Us are woke. But of course, does that leak into the campaign? That's really the big question. Does all of this leak into the campaign? We've also seen that in many ways they reject orthodoxy, but this is the Wokepedia podcast. So we need to really dive into this idea of, are they woke? So Kyle, what say you?
Yep.
So He Gets Us woke?
Yes. Okay.
All right,
thanks for
let's
coming
go
to
to
the
bed.
episode. No, let's read quotes. So Sam, I'm just going to go ahead and read the first 2, and then if you want to just read the third one, then we'll go through.
Yeah.
But because the first 2 are just so short. So Bathsheba, a woman who was raped by the king, from He Gets Us. Mary, an unwed teen mom.
All right. And then here's another one. Of the dozens of women mentioned in Hebrew scriptures, why were these 5 women chosen? Is it because each of them demonstrates different aspects of the plight of gender inequality in most cultures? He Gets Us in regards to Jesus's genealogy. Whew.
So
we could do an episode on all 3 of these.
We very easily could. And it's sad when them teaching that Mary was an unwed teen mom would be the shortest of the episodes. That's when you know we're into pretty bizarre territory. But we need to at least comment on and kill these ideas and show why they're woke.
Yep.
I mean, the whole Bathsheba was raped thing, 100% a believe all women, a Me Too idea. The text, here's the key thing. I teach a college group at my church. I teach a hermeneutics class with them. We actually looked at that story and asked that question and just ripped the text apart to see what the text says. The text in nowhere supports that conclusion at all, to the point where it's not just not mentioned, so it's in the realm of speculation, but to the realm where that is bad speculation. You are injecting something onto the text that the text goes so far against that you cannot state that even as a hypothetical.
Right.
It just is not there. There are problems. David sins. David has a whole bunch of sin in that story.
Of course.
But rape is not one of them. Now, does he abuse his power as king? Yeah. Yes, in more than one way in that. He abuses it to kill one of his closest friends. He uses it to try and cover up his sin. He does use it in initiating the encounter with Bathsheba. But again, the text is not presented in a way of rape.
Right.
And we could go into that. We probably should go into that at some point, but let's continue on. Any short comments, because apparently mine comments there were short, but any short comments on Mary as an unwed teen mom? I know you did mention this earlier in an earlier part, but refresh people's minds.
Yeah. So we did talk about this earlier. I think it was in either part 1 or part 2. But Mary is an unwed teen mom. Well, sure. She was a teen mom. And unwed, it probably really wouldn't fit, because by the time Jesus was birthed, she was married. But also within that cultural context, she wasn't at an unusual time to have children. She was very much in line with the time to have children as to when they had kids. And so this is really forcing our culture upon the Bible. It's not compatible at all as to what the story is really giving. That's not the point of the Christmas story, of the Christmas account. Is that it's not even a sub point. It's not even there that Mary is an unwed teen mom. Like that's not there. Like that's, well, you can kind of, like I said, you can kind of make some of those. You can kind of make some of those points, but that's not. It doesn't relate
vaguely,
right? It doesn't relate.
But the Jews wouldn't even look at her in this, with the way we use the term unwed. Would the Jews look at her in that same way as someone who was engaged?
No, I mean it was a legitimate commitment that took divorce in order to go and to break that commitment. But also by the time that they made it to Bethlehem, they were married. Like, well, like this wasn't a thing. This was a thing that when Jesus was born, people went back and started doing the math and were like, wait a minute, I don't think they were married when that happened. But it probably wasn't a thing where Mary was showing and that people realized that she was pregnant within the community before her and Joseph got married.
It's adding so much speculation, just heavy speculation, to then present Mary as this weak victim who we should like have sympathy for. When what are Mary's words herself? I mean, she's just like, man, I'm blessed, and all generations are going to know that I'm blessed.
Right.
Like she knows how big of a deal it is.
Right. Well,
she's such a phenomenal example of faith. Absolutely phenomenal.
Behold the maidservant of the Lord. Now,
frustrates
also,
me when they do this.
The whole thing where Of the dozens of women mentioned in Hebrew scriptures, why are these 5 women chosen? It is because each of them demonstrates different aspects of the plight of gender inequality in most cultures. He gets us in regard to Jesus's genealogy. You know, we read that one. I don't think that's why they're there.
No. I mean, they present that as a question, but it's not presented as a legitimate question. It's a rhetorical question.
Right. And in reality, I think a lot of the ones that they're going and talking about, because like Rahab would be one that obviously they'd be pointing out in this. Ruth would be another. I believe that the greater point is to show that Jesus's intention was always to save the Gentiles, though the Jews are God's chosen people. The intention is that God would save the Gentiles, and that is part of that. But I mean, that would take like a whole podcast to really develop all of this. But it's not to show the plight of gender inequality. Like what? That has, yeah. In fact, they would probably go through the stories of those people and go and talk about like how terrible of a life that these ladies had and stuff like that in wrong ways. But nonetheless, let's move on to the Samaritans.
Yeah. So Samaritans were considered almost subhuman by most Jewish people at the time because of their racial impurity. Okay, so Sam, I know that part of the issue with the Samaritans is that they were part Jew mixed with the pagans that the Assyrians moved into the land to repopulate it, and that caused tension. But was the tension over, well, we'll ignore the fact that they used race and how problematic that is. But is the tension over ethnicity? Is that the issue that's going on between the Jews and the Samaritans?
Not really. I mean, I'm sure that there's some of that comes in with the culture, but let's. Can I just point out the obvious with this? If the Samaritans, who were half Jew, half Gentile, they didn't like them because they're not full Jewish, what would the Jews have thought about the Gentiles who are not Jewish at all? Like, and why then not use that example? Because this isn't as much about race as it is, about Northern Kingdom, Southern Kingdom, the worshipers of those of gods up here and worshiper down here in Jerusalem. In that, I mean, this is Hatfield and McCoy kind of an idea.
Yeah, and they do this constantly. They bring up the story of the Good Samaritan at one point, and 3 times in bringing it up, just a very short description of it, they mention race 3 times, and including that one of Jesus' main points was to include racial tension. But it's not primarily and fundamentally, it's not a ethnicity issue. Primarily and fundamentally, it's a religious issue.
Right.
And there's huge questions of, are the Samaritans really Jews or not? And can they worship in the temple like a Jew? And do we need to keep ourselves pure from the Samaritans? And obviously the Jews, there's also a lot of pride in there as well, because the Southern Kingdom versus the Northern Kingdom got deposed, and then you get the Samaritans forming from that, and then the Southern Kingdom kind of retains their Jewishness more, and when the exiles return, they can trace their lineage better. So there's a lot of complex history there. But to say racism, like, misses the point by 1,000 miles.
Right. And
anyway,
in this argument, as pointed out with the story of the woman at the well, who was a Samaritan, because she goes and she says, ask Jesus, where are we to worship? You guys say it's in the temple. I mean, by the way, she didn't go and be like, never mind. We won't get into all that because I'm sure that they present all kinds of woke stuff on the woman at the well. That's one of the favorite texts of the woke. But that was her question. Where are we to worship? But let's continue on here. Unknown women were never spoken to because they were traditionally considered the property to men in their lives. I guess there it is, right there, the woman at the well that they're talking about, right? With that kind of a thing.
That actually is. Yep.
But the woman at the well,
they're twisting it. They're slanting this.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Do you want to go to the next one?
Yeah.
I'm getting frustrated, so I'm trying not to be too frustrated here at the end.
I'll try and make the quickest possible comment on that previous one. In a certain sense, yes, what they said there is true. In many senses, it's not true. They're exaggerating certain things. It's not just unknown women were never spoken to because they were property of men. Like, they're trying to compare it to Saudi Arabia. They're trying to compare it to oppressive Muslim culture. But that is not at all what was going on back in that day and time. And just because somebody was, a young unmarried woman was under the authority of her father, and random guys, it'd be considered culturally taboo for a random guy to start chatting her up because it would be considered sort of a sign of like courtship interest type thing. Mm-hmm. Doesn't mean that there's this oppressive ownership from the father. Just because a husband, the wife is under the husband's authority doesn't mean that there's this oppressive ownership and no one can talk to her. No, that's not what's going on. They're also ignoring the third type of woman, which is the widow. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's frustrating. It's frustrating, and it's trying to paint a very modern picture to appeal to something that people connect with in a modern sense. Continuing on, what would the world look like if we loudly proclaimed together that the love for others, the compassion for another's lived experience, the empathy for their position, and the respect for their dignity were the most important values we could hold? Sam, what would the world look like if we did that? Because I think we're getting a picture of that from the wokeification of the United States.
Yeah, I was going to say,
and it's starting to look very cruel.
I think we'd have a woketopia. And you're right, it is very cruel, and it's not a utopia.
No, but it ends up becoming the opposite of what they claim it's supposed to be.
Right. So that's just kind of some of the social justice that they bring out. But what about Jesus specifically? Do they present Jesus as a social justice warrior? Mm-hmm. So this one's from John Lee. We've quoted him quite a bit. He's from Lerma. And that's because he gives so many great quotes. And here's another one. Jesus was a refugee as an infant. He experienced anxiety in the Garden of Gethsemane. He called out injustice against the poor. He treated women as equals in a time and place where that was unheard of. And he befriended outcasts, violent zealots, and corrupt bureaucrats. Jesus defended criminals, and he touched the untouchable. John Lee from Lerma.
There's a lot of weird statements in that, but the one that gets me is the Jesus defended criminals line. I don't know what to say about that because my mind doesn't have a category for that. I can't understand that. It's like there's so much context missing. I feels like I walked into the middle of a movie and I have no idea what's going on.
Well, I'll be honest. On the other ones, at least I can trace where they're going or like where they're coming from. Like I can go, oh, they're talking about the woman at the well here. Oh, they're talking about Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. I don't know what it's referencing. Perhaps I'm just blanking on
Yeah.
this, but I'm not sure who they're referencing when they're saying that Jesus defended criminals. But you're right that this is a big thing, because what they're not understanding is the legal system of laws and higher laws. Of course, I would defend somebody who is a criminal in the sense of if they criminalize Christianity or something that's good. But they're not actually a criminal. They're a criminal maybe to the state, but not to God. And would be an unjust thing that the state would be doing. But that's not
Yeah.
what they're presenting here.
Well, I mean, I have one guess, and that's because there's another part. I don't think we have any quotes from it, but there's another section where they really hammer into the woman caught in adultery. And my guess is maybe that's what they're going into, because she was violating, prohibition against adultery. But he didn't defend her in the kind of open sense that they're using it. What's the absolute key that he says at the end of that story?
Go and sin no more.
And this is a small degree of speculation, but one of the ways that I read something like that is because God's never going to, because she's an adulteress. So even the way Kant treats her, I feel like is more merciful than what God actually requires himself. But I kind of read the go and sin no more as Jesus having a knowledge of how that interaction has played out. And that the outcome might be that it's likely that she is not going to sin no more. The likely outcome is that she is believing in him.
Right.
But that's partially just speculation, and it doesn't actually even affect it.
No. But
because I have faith in Jesus that he handled the situation correctly.
Yeah.
But he's not just openly defending her. Sam, is he defending her sin?
No, he's definitely not defending her sin. And the other thing is that it would be hard pressed to call her a criminal, because under Jewish law, there would need to be another witness that you would have had to bring the one who she was caught in adultery with. And so in the technical sense of that, she wouldn't even be considered a criminal at that point. And that's why they were trying to get this, because they're probably taking a naked woman in the middle of the street, throwing her in front of Jesus and saying, see, look, she's obviously been caught in adultery. Should we go and stone her, which would go against the Roman law at the time, because they didn't have the authority to put someone to death. I mean, there's so many complexities of
they were
this.
Trying to trap Jesus.
Right. And instead, Jesus just, wrote something in the dirt. We don't know what he wrote, but he got everybody to run away. And then he tells the woman, go and sin no more.
He found a clever way to defeat their hypocrisy.
Right. Let's keep going though. What's the next quote that they have for it, that we have down for them?
Jesus rallied for justice too. Specifically, that was picked from Lerma, but it was just an example of their He Gets Us ads.
Yeah. So here's another one.
Rallied for justice too.
Yeah. See, they're trying to get you to do something. He crossed racial boundaries to the shock of many around him. He gets us.
And again, this goes into the whole Samaritan thing. We're not going to rehash that again. They're definitely, again, just keep in mind, they're tweaking things to try and poke at a modern concept within it and not take the reality of what's going on or the totality of what's going on. They're also injecting race and not having any understanding of what that word means, rather than going to a biblical understanding of ethnos. Next quote. They called him a friend of sinners. It was supposed to be an insult, but Jesus wore it proudly. He was a friend to everyone. And what do friends do? They eat dinner and share in each other's lives. Now, Sam, I know a lot of people, because it's a very common thing. A lot of people believe that Jesus took on the title of friend of sinner. So a lot of you listening might think that in your mind, think that somewhere Jesus affirmed that statement. But he was never, was he a friend of sinners?
Well, he never affirmed that. And I think the greatest example that we have of looking at this to give us our answer is the account of Zacchaeus. And what happened with the account of Zacchaeus is that after Jesus went to his house and he ate and he dined with him, Zacchaeus came out and he said, "Look, I give half of what I have to my poor and to the poor. And if I've wronged anybody, I'm going to go and repay them 4 times as much." Zacchaeus clearly had his life turned around. There was this thing called repentance. And so, in the sense of a friend does what's best for the person, yes, Jesus was a friend in that sense, but he wasn't a friend in the sense of going and being influenced by. He wasn't going and hanging out with Zacchaeus. He was on a mission to change Zacchaeus's life. And that's...
Yep. He was not a companion to sinners.
Right. He wasn't
He
sitting
was a
and
friend in
seeing
the truest sense. Yeah, exactly. But he was a friend in the truest sense because he called them to repentance.
Right.
And he never just accepted people's sin and left them there. He always called them to repentance. He didn't fellowship with sinners.
Right.
He met sinners and called them to repent.
So here's
continuing on.
Yeah, here's the next one. But the impact of being displaced always stuck with Jesus. Oh, man. We can see in his compassion towards others who are labeled as outsiders. He gets us. Just quickly, they're talking about when Jesus fled, when Joseph took Mary and Jesus and he fled to Egypt. That's what they're talking about, being displaced. And they're trying to go into he wasn't a refugee. He wasn't an immigrant. He wasn't an illegal alien. That's not at all what was going on. It was moving from one part of the same empire to another part of the same empire. But yes, they were moving, but that's not being displaced. I mean, lots of people move lots of times in their life, and we don't call it being displaced.
And it frustrates me. It's bizarre because they treat Jesus, again, this attacks the divinity of Jesus, because they treat him as a victim of trauma that could never fully get over that trauma. And so that trauma informs how he then interacts with people.
Right.
That's just not, I mean, that's beyond ridiculous.
Right. It's not the Jesus of the Bible. We got 2 more here with Jesus for quotes.
Okay, let's continue on. Who spoke out against the religious and political leaders of his day, who advocated for the marginalized and oppressed, but who always, always, always loved others despite their identity, beliefs, or values. Jesus showed us the path to human flourishing and fulfillment was to love others as oneself, even if it costs you your life. Expressing outrage at injustices, being a voice to the voiceless, and boldly representing your values and identity are important parts of the human experience. Jesus did all these things.
That's just a word salad of woke buzzwords. Like, that's all
they got
that
pretty
is.
much every wokey buzzword in there. I mean, including things that like identity.
Right. Which I think that's a good one for people to tuck away, because we're going to see what they mean by that when we look here just in a few quotes. because they mean something by that identity, don't they?
Well, yeah, and that's something important to note. None of this stuff is just slapped together. I mean, this is something with hundreds of millions of dollars behind it.
Right.
You don't just slap this together. Every word is very intentional.
Right.
And so, yeah, we can judge the words as intentional.
So here's the last quote we have towards Jesus in general. He followed what he believed was his true calling to identify, to demonstrate how the tenets of his ancient faith were actually designed to translate into a movement of radical love and inclusivity. That's universalism. It's wokeism. It's denying the substitutionary atonement. I mean, it's all of these things.
Not just sloppy. I know a lot of people are going to try and defend a lot of this stuff is just kind of sloppy. But again, keep in mind who it's aimed at. Keep in mind they claim that this has been vetted by theologians and pastors and things like that. This is tons of money. This is very intentional.
And Kyle,
we've defend it as sloppy.
Right. And it'd be one thing if we put, one or two quotes and that's it. We've given dozens of quotes. So if it is sloppy, if that's your argument, then I have the question, why would you have anything to do with an organization that is that sloppy?
Yeah.
Because
why would you have anything to do with an organization that can't get 1 + 1 = 2 right?
Right. I mean, why, if you have a filet mignon on one plate and a moldy chicken nugget on the other, why would you pick up the moldy chicken nugget and eat that? I mean, but that's what you'd be arguing if you're saying that it's sloppy here.
Mm-hmm.
Because it would just be terrible. The reality of it is that they're not sloppy. They're bringing an intentional message, and we can see that. I mean, I said something about identity, and we can even see that here in this next one, with inclusivity. But what about homosexuality and transgenderism, Kyle? Where do they stand on that?
Yeah. So this is just a much smaller segment because they don't have overt comments on this the same way that they do some other things. But two little things. One, I contacted their church finder thing, and well, I had to contact it twice. Because the first time, despite putting in a zip code that was 1,000 miles away, Saddleback contacted me. Which it shows me a big problem is churches are, using this in a predatory way. They're not connecting with local churches. It's big churches, trying to capture the people. But did the second one and, asked questions about, can I be gay and be a Christian? And immediately get a big affirm, yes, you can. So they're sending me to gay affirming churches. So at the minimum, they're not vetting any churches on something like that.
Right.
But then there was another pastor a while ago when He Gets Us blew up and the SBC involvement kind of blew up, who contacted their chat about transgenderism. Can I be transgender? And again, they got an affirmation from He Gets Us, from their live chat service, and then was sent to put in contact with a transgender affirming church. So again, it just adds another dimension of why would you be involved with this? And getting to the point of actually sloppy things, because I think this is just sloppy. But I also contacted their live chat, and I didn't do this with the explicit, I'm not a Christian, like putting on a kind of a persona and pretending I'm not a Christian or something like that. I did this basically just bluntly asking the questions. And yes, the sort of implication leading was that they were talking to someone who wasn't a Christian. But I want to know I wanted to know what are they actually saying to the people that are contacting them before I go out and accuse them of anything.
Right. So just quickly share that experience.
Well, I've got the whole thing. You can read the whole log, and it's not great. But 3 quick quotes from it. Just asking about Jesus. What was Jesus' message? They say, that's a great question. We believe the Jesus in the Bible is the real Jesus, seeking peace, compassionate, and loving toward everyone. Even after 200 years, 2000, he's still the most radical, most disruptive, most famous, most loving person who ever lived. There's a reason for that. Whatever the issue or challenge in your life, Jesus and his ways can help you. He gets us. So they just blatantly present I asked, what was Jesus' mission? And they say, it was just to take all your problems away, be the solution to everything, and just spread this love movement. So I pushed into them, and they finally come back with, I got them to admit a decent portion of the gospel. And so I asked, why is that? Why do you hide that? Why did I have to pry that from you? They responded with, the gospel's not hidden. There are many facets of Jesus and his message. We don't deny what the scripture teaches about humans being sinful and needing a savior. Okay, good, right? But we do want to help people see Jesus the way that many who were his friends in life saw him. He was a friend you could go to when everyone else abandoned you. Someone you would see the good, someone who would see the good and bad in you and still love you and help you. Again, presenting this it's like, oh yeah, the gospel is good, but have you seen this part of Jesus that isn't part of the gospel and in fact is teaching false things about Jesus?
It's almost like when you get close
like
to the gospel, they want to pull you away from it.
Yes, and that's something that was disturbing. Last quote, and again, you can read the whole chat log, but last quote, and they blatantly lie to me in it, and I call them out, and they refuse to answer it, and then get passive aggressive, and say one of the most bizarre lines that I've ever seen someone say. But as I mentioned before, hell isn't our focus. Our focus is on who Jesus was, how he lived his life. If it's a message and important part, there's some grammatical issues with their typing. I'm just reading it verbatim. If it's a message, an important part of the gospel that many have not understood, the part of this that we have focused our ad on is Jesus' life, how he chose to spend his time among us. So, folks, even when they sort of admit the truth, they then have to distract from it. Oh, no. Don't focus on that. We know you're basically asking us about this. You want to know. No. Just inspiration. So, Sam, I think you already summed it up. Why would you eat the moldy chicken nugget when you got filet mignon?
Right.
Unless you're a dog who just wants to eat the moldy chicken nugget, or a toddler.
Yeah.
Both of those would probably go for the moldy chicken nugget. But what's the commonality between those two?
They slobber a lot?
Well, yeah, they do, but they have no wisdom.
That's right.
They don't know better.
And I think there's a couple things here just as we kind of come to this conclusion. One, we hope that this resource has been helpful for you. It is broken up into parts. We started off with a quick introduction, and then we went over really the organizations that build this in part one, that are behind He Gets Us, and the ones that are involved in it and who partner with He Gets Us. Part two is, how does He Gets Us, how do they describe the campaign themselves? So we let them say it in their own words. Part three is, of course, where they separated Jesus from the church, from his church, from his body. Part four was going over, was Jesus really God, or was he just man? And of course, we know that they err on the wrong side of that. And part five is, does it matter what I believe about Jesus? And we believe it matters. He Gets Us doesn't seem to think it matters that much. And this final part has been on social Jesus as a social justice warrior and them presenting their social justice and their wokeism. So hopefully this resource has been helpful to you. And so we're asking you to share this with as many people as you know. And we are going to get this out and break it up into a little bit more bite-sized parts, but we're giving you the whole thing right away. And so we want you to share this with others because we want to spread the word that He Gets Us is woke. It's not a biblical gospel. And of course, they're not leading people to Jesus Christ. They're really, in many ways, pulling people away from Jesus Christ.
Well, there you have it, folks. Our information on the He Gets Us campaign, who's behind it, what they teach, and just putting the evidence out there for you to use the wisdom that God's given you to come to a conclusion. And hopefully you see the issues, the errors, and you mark and avoid this heretical organization. Now, please, if this has been useful, share it with other people, not because we need more, we want to get bigger numbers and things like that. No, because we want this information to get out there so that people can be informed. They spent $20 million just on the Super Bowl. We don't have that. The only way this information gets out there is from you sharing it with people. Again, the whole point is to be informed. Go into the links in the description to get more details. And remember, don't go woke.